Hey everyone, welcome back to another market update with the Patti Martin Group. I'm joined with Jennifer Adams and Patti Martin. How are you guys?
Well, thanks.
Great. How are you?
Right on. I'm good. We are filming this at the beginning of February, so we have a little bit of a disconnect, maybe an advantage over some of these stats because we've seen about a week into February here. But let's lay some foundation here. January 29th, we've had our sixth straight rate reduction. We're now sitting at 3%. Stress test is still full in effect. We have looming Trump tariffs. How are we feeling about the economy? Like, what else is going on that we should mention before we dive into these stats?
Oh, yeah, let's just talk about something really light.
Yeah, that's so light. I was wondering how long it would take us to use the T word, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, where do you guys want to start?
Well, let's get right into it because there's a lot of stuff going on, but let's talk about some of the numbers here and we'll talk about how the economy kind of affects that as well. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. The year started off at a decent pace here. So the Vancouver board recorded 1,552 sales in January 2025. It's almost 9% up from the previous year. Now, this is 11% of a decrease month over month. And more interesting, this is the fourth straight month of sales declines. So are you guys surprised by this? Is this simply a beginning of the year mentality with buyers, a sales cycle? How would you describe buyer demand right now?
Well, like you mentioned at the start, I think that, if anyone told me, hey, there's going to be 6 successive rate cuts, I would say to you, wow, we're going to go into 2025 with a huge amount of buyer demand. And that didn't happen. I mean, I think there are some savvy buyers out there. There's some people that are in the right financial position, but I think there's an incredible amount of hesitation. And I feel like, we talk about the month over month stats. Month over month, I say there's an incredible amount of hesitation in the market. So that's what I think we see.
I think that February stats are going to tell the story best, not January's.
Do you think they're going to be better or worse in terms of sales? Fewer sales or more sales?
Fewer
Yeah. Sales.
Yes.
Interesting
indeed.
point of view. One of the things I was looking at when I'm looking at all the graphs is that this was the highest selling January in the past 3 years. I just thought that was an interesting stat to share with you all.
So it's the highest January, but we had fewer sales in January than we did in December.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, sales are on the decline right now.
Mm-hmm.
But sellers have remained quite active. So when we're talking about homes that are newly listed for sale, there was 5,500 detached, attached apartment properties newly listed for sale. It represents almost 47% increase year over year. So when we're talking about the recent increase in new listings, do you guys think this will continue throughout January and February, or is this just a blip in data?
No, I think it will continue, definitely. And
I agree.
I feel that the mentality of the sellers, as I see it, is business as usual. We're going to move, we're doing. And the difference right now is the mentality of the buyers and what they think they're going to do and what they think is going to happen. So naturally, whenever there's this much confusion and chaos in the world, there's a bit of a pause. That's not unusual. We've seen it many times before. This is where being old is an advantage for me. So, I go back to 2008 when we had the subprime crisis. Everyone in Canada thought, oh my God, this is so horrible. And then in January of 2009, we had no inventory and we had 10 offers for every listing that we put on the market. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I think people will calm down because I think although this is a big distraction south of us, I think they're going to have so many problems that Canada might fall by the wayside as a target for let's cause some extra chaos outside of our country. I think they'll have enough to worry about that we'll lose some steam as a distraction, but could be wrong.
So if we look just kind of one step further from what you just said, so Adam's asking, do we think more inventory is coming on the market? You think yes, there is more inventory coming on the market, and I tend to agree. What do we think prices are going to do?
Well, nobody's panicked. Like, sellers are not panicked right now. So even though they put their place on the market, that doesn't mean we're going to see this huge drop in price. It's not what happens. If people can't get the price they want and they don't have a need to sell, in other words, no one's died, divorced, or absolutely been transferred or bankrupt, and that's not the majority of our sales, then they'll just come off the market. They'll just wait.
So you don't think it will really affect price? Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, I am seeing that with a few of my buyers. I mean, it's still early on in the year. We don't know what's going to happen. The stress test is affecting buyers still. They're still qualifying at your posted rate plus 2%, or I think, what is it, 5.5%? So between 5 and 6%, our buyers are qualifying. So they're still capped on what they can afford. And a lot of the stuff that they want to get into is just out of reach. Even though these homes have been sitting on the market for 60, 70, 80 days, that negotiation doesn't seem to be there.
No, because people have an idea and then it doesn't work for them if it doesn't fall into the price band that they're comfortable with. There's no sense of urgency on the seller's part in terms of pricing, and there's no sense of urgency on the buyer's part in terms of pulling the trigger. That's why we have a kind of a flat market right now. That one of those variables could change at any time. I don't think the buyers are right. I think that the sellers have staying power. There's been this big talk about, oh my gosh, interest rates and how much it costs and everyone's going to be under the water. But that never happened. And many people have renegotiated their rate and they're just fine because they had to qualify for a higher rate. So we already knew they could afford it. That was why that was put in place. And it was in fact a really good insurance policy for exactly what happened.
Moving on, the total number of properties currently listed for sale on the MLS system is just under 11,500. So this is a 33% increase compared to the same time last year, and it's 11% month over month. So December going into January, we're up on that inventory. So we touched on this briefly, but are you noticing a shift in seller behavior compared to last year? And why do you think more sellers are entering the market, at least in early 2025? So this is kind of a little bit of a shift from perspective from our previous discussion where we're saying sellers aren't super urgent to sell, but they're quite active to get on the market. So do you think there's a connection
they're
there?
not super urgent to adjust their pricing. I'm not saying they're not they're not, no one has a sense of urgency to get on the market, although some people want to move, right? But in other markets where things have become unstable, I mean, sellers just might decide to pack it in for a while and wait it out. And that might be maybe a good decision if there's too much inventory, right? If you really have to have a price. I mean, there's things that have to sell. And those things will be the things that set the pricing. So we'll find out. How urgent things are.
Yeah, that's really what determines the seller's urgency because, often we have to have difficult conversations with sellers and we say to them, listen, this is what your property will bring you right now. Do you want to be the one to set the price or do you want to be the one to follow the price? And then that determines kind of what we do.
Even Adam, you've been involved in a couple of offers lately where they are enticing buyers with a lower price and then refusing to sell at the actual price that they're asking or even in excess of it. And
it's a bait and switch.
It's a very interesting marketing strategy in a flat market because it plain hell doesn't work. And whoever's giving them that advice, shame on them. But having said that, here you have exactly what we're talking about. You've got people wanting to buy, you've got people wanting to sell, but everyone's not aligned on price. And so
Mhm.
nothing happens. Nothing.
Talking about being aligning on price and sales and getting ready to sell, we're looking at the overall sales to active listing ratio. So overall, the market as a whole is 14.1%. So it is a balanced market, the lower end of a balanced market. When we're looking at detached homes, sales to active listing is 9.2%.
Hmm.
Attached is, so that's townhouses and duplexes, that's 18.5%. Condos are 16.5%. So when we're talking to our sellers, we're trying to give advice to our sellers, what kind of advice would we give them about the impact of like the increased supply and our home's value? So if we're looking at detached being a sales to active listing ratio of 9.2%, it's favoring buyers.
But it still comes down to price. The prices really haven't changed. If things are not selling and your sellers are not getting any offers, it's often because they're slightly overpriced. And our market is just too informed. The buyers are too informed today. They have all kinds of resources to figure out what things are worth. And when the seller has expectations that exceed what market value might be, it sits. And that's where we're at. We have a whole lot of those sellers right now. I believe that.
Well, that's where the value of, I think, our position comes into, because we're boots on the ground. We're on both sides of the conversation, right? We're hearing the feedback from the sellers. We're hearing the feedback from the buyers. Now we have to kind of filter that and give it out to everybody appropriately so that we can make those types of transactions.
And
I can go on assessment. I can look at graphs all day to see what Steveston's selling for, what Terra Nova is selling for, what East Van is selling for. But what's actually happening day to day might not correlate appropriately.
Well, I don't think anything's changed substantially in the last 7 or 8 months. I don't think so. Do you think prices have changed that much? I don't think so. But people seem to think it. So they think if they just think hard enough, it'll happen. Not happening yet. So prices are, if you're well priced, you're still selling. It takes a little longer, and you might not be sitting in multiple offers, but it still sells if it's correctly priced.
And if you're giving the buyer what they want. So, a lot of buyers can't afford to do renos. They can't afford to do, tremendous fix-its. They need to be kind of all in, and there needs to be an affordability factor within that purchase price. So, does a seller need to do some tidying up? Do they need to do a little bit of work to make it kind of happen? There's let's not forget that preparation when we go to sell. It's not just a matter of, let's put it up for sale. Like, you've got to make sure you shine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, preparation is absolutely key.
Mm-hmm.
Last question to both of you, and it's just looking at the market ahead. So do you expect 2025 to be a buyers, sellers, or more of a balanced market overall? I know we're really early in the year, but professional opinion, what do you guys think is going to happen?
Jen, I think he thinks we have crystal balls.
Ooh. If you put me on the spot, and I think this is a pretty easy one, frankly, like especially for the first 6 months of the year, we're in a balanced market. There's a couple of sellers that will knock it out of the park if they have a really unusual, fantastic property that, there's just a certain demographic that's waiting for. They're going to have an unusual kind of thing where they might even see themselves in multiples. But for the vast majority of sellers and buyers, this is a balanced market. You're going to have to work with a skilled realtor to kind of make sure that all the pieces of the puzzle fit. And, you'll probably be able to achieve a sale, but you've got to work with someone who's giving you good advice.
Right. And if you're buying and selling in the same market, it's not a problem.
It's a wash. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Are there any more last minute comments you would like to make for the episode?
I think everyone needs to just calm down.
There you go.
Remember that we're a solid country.
Right on. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next month on the next market update. Have a great day, everyone.
Looking forward to it.